The idea behind absolute value is a simple one, although working with absolute value and telling how far apart numbers are, that's a little bit different. So first, a definition of what absolute value is simply how far a number is from zero. For example, if I have the number 4 here, how many spaces away from zero is it? Well, 4 is 4 spaces away from zero. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay. So if I have a number and it's -3, how many spaces is -3 from zero? Well, it's 3 spaces from zero. Notice in both situations, when I was counting the number of spaces from zero, that it wasn't negative. For example, -3 is not -3 spaces from zero, it's just 3 away. And it applies to every number. So if I'm looking at 7, 7 is 7 spaces from zero. Well, going to -7 is also 7 spaces from zero. So the way that we write this is if I want to absolute value of 7, these are not the number 1. This is sort of like a tall bracket inside this and is the 7. And it's saying absolute value of 7 is 7 spaces from zero. Well, absolute value of -7, that's also 7 spaces from zero. Absolute value is never a negative number. It's always going to be a positive answer. So if I have two numbers on the number line, let's say I'm at -5, and I want to know how far away it is from 3. They're on opposite sides of zero. Well, -5 is going to be 5 spaces to get to zero, and then it's going to be another 3 spaces to get to 3. But the way that we write this in absolute value is the absolute value of 5 plus the absolute value of 3. So it's the number of spaces this one is from zero, which is 5, and the number of spaces 3 is away from zero, and that's a 3. And when I add those together, I get an 8. And if I look on the number line, starting from here, this is 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So -5 and 3 are 8 spaces away from each other. Let's try that again with different numbers. So let's say I wanted to know how far away -6 is from 8. Well, I would take the absolute value of -6 and I would add to it, because they're on opposite sides of zero, I would add to that the absolute value of 8, because it takes 6 spaces to get to zero and another 8 to get to where the 8 is. So the absolute value of -6 is 6, plus the absolute value of 8 is 8. And when I add those together, I get 14. And 6 plus 8 is 14. That might seem like a pretty simple idea, but what if the numbers are on the same side of zero? In this example, I'm going to take the number 2 and I'm going to take the number 5. And I wouldn't add the absolute value of 2, which is 2, to the absolute value of 5, which is 5. So 2 plus 5 is 7. These are not 7 spaces away from each other. And they're only 3 spaces away. So what happens when the numbers are both on the same side of zero is you actually subtract their absolute values. So looking over here, if I'm at -5 and then I want to get to -1, well, the absolute value of each of these would need to be subtracted. So I would have absolute value of -5 minus the absolute value of -1. So the absolute value of -5 is 5, and the absolute value of -1 is 1. So these are only 4 spaces apart. And checking that, I start here 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. So to get from -1 to -5 is 4 spaces. Here we have a vertical number line, and when I'm looking at this, I want to know, let's say the temperature at the beginning of the day was -4 degrees. And by the afternoon, the temperature went up to 10 degrees. What was the increase in temperature? Well, since they're on opposite sides of zero, I would add their absolute values. So I would have the absolute value of minus 4 degrees plus the absolute value of 10 degrees. The absolute value of minus 4 is 4, and absolute value of 10 is 10. So the temperature change was 14 degrees. Now let's say that the temperature started off at a positive temperature, and we'll say that the temperature was 2 degrees, and the temperature went up to 10 degrees. Well, the temperature increase, it didn't rise 12 degrees. When they're on the same side of zero, I would subtract their absolute values. I take the bigger number first, so the absolute value of 10 minus the absolute value of 2. So absolute value of 10 is 10 minus absolute value of 2 is 2. So there was an 8-degree difference. So looking from here, I went from 2 is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So the temperature increased 8 degrees.